Hello and welcome everyone. We'll be getting started in just a moment.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Transforming Industrial Automation featuring Johnson Controls. This is a shared story about the Nintex and Box partnership. I'm going to kick things off quickly by covering our agenda for today. We'll quickly go through introductions, tell you a little bit about the Box and Nintex relationship, and then really the meat of today's presentation is going to be the Johnson Controls story. At the end, we'll open it up for questions and answers, and then send everybody off to enjoy the rest of their day. From our team, my name's Andy Swanson. I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Sales. I've also got Katie Kuhn with me today, a Solutions Architect from our team who helps support Johnson Controls evaluation. We are also going to be introducing our featured presenter, Bryan Bartlett, here shortly, and allow him to tell you a little bit about himself after we go through an overview of who Nintex is and our partnership with Box. That said, Nintex is the market leader in intelligent process automation and has been for a number of years. We started in 2006 in Australia, and since then have been heads down helping our over 1,700 partners and over 8,000 customers publish millions of workflows across the varying ecosystems that we work with here. You see a couple mentioned, including Microsoft, Salesforce. But today's really about our newest relationship with Box and helping everybody on the call understand how you can leverage our workflow cloud in partnership with Box's new cloud content management capabilities. Zooming in on that story, we've seen Box evolve as an organization from cloud file syncing and sharing and to their newest evolution of cloud content management. And now talking about how we can take that management capability and extend it one step further with workflow and content automation. And that's really going to be what today's story is all about. And we're excited to have Bryan here to kind of highlight how Johnson Controls is doing that. So with that being said, Bryan, I'm going to turn things over to you to just introduce yourself and let you tell us a little bit about your background and who you are.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Bryan Bartlett, and I'm a certified Salesforce administrator and have been working with Salesforce since 2005. Originally, I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and now in Denver, Colorado. So in 2016, we started working with DocJen, and really our goal was to find a way to produce an executive summary report. We have disparate data systems, and we needed to bring data together from several different systems. And what we were doing at the time is generating an Excel file, uploading that into Salesforce, and using Nintex DocJen, we were producing the file for our executive team. So we were looking for a better way to do that, in a more automated way to do that. And we came in touch with Nintex workflow. And so we decided to start down that road and see if we could automate some of our processes around this executive summary report, which we produce daily. And it goes to all of the higher level executives in the company. So we wanted something that would, be pleasing to the eye and contain the information that we needed it to contain, to give everyone an overview of where we are. So I think the way we approached it was, let's find a way to take some of the manual processes out of it. Yeah.
Before you go too far into the solution, could you give us a little bit of background on who Johnson Controls is for the people on the call that don't know your organization?
Sure. Johnson Controls is a global company, and actually I was working for Tyco Security Products when Johnson Controls acquired Tyco Security Products. So Johnson Controls is a global manufacturer, and they work with a lot of HVAC systems and a lot of the major buildings around the world. And Tyco is a security products company, as well as fire suppression and cameras and intrusion and all that security-based hardware.
Great.
So our headquarters actually today is in Cork, Ireland. And like the screen says, we have about 120,000 employees, and we're obviously all over the world.
Thanks.
So Johnson Controls is a fairly large company, and is very interested in automating as many of these processes as possible.
Great. Thanks for the background there, Bryan. And you were starting to touch on the business problem, and it looks like the headline on this slide is, we were overcoming a manual process to produce and distribute financial reports to executives. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Right. So we have this executive summary report. That's kind of what we're focused on today. And we still are, in some senses, automating part of it, and we're looking to automate more of it as we move forward. But today, we draw data, our finance team draws data from 4 or 5 different sources, and they compile an Excel spreadsheet. That spreadsheet is then uploaded into Salesforce every morning. We run the DocJen piece of it against that file, and we produce this executive summary report. So there is some information in Salesforce as well that's added to the document when it's uploaded, and then the DocJen is run. So, like I said, that happens every day. And so with Nintex workflow, we're really looking to take some of the manual processes out of that. Right now we're reliant on email, and we really want to make this more efficient. We'd like to get this report into a bigger a wider distribution, and so we think that using this Nintex workflow tool is starting to help us do that. And so so today, like I said, we upload that manually. So that means someone has to have access to Salesforce It can't just be any of the finance team. It has to be someone who can log in, upload that file, then run the DocJen, and the output is then sent to the executive team. So what we're working on now is automating some of that process. So what we do today, and I think we can move to the next slide. What we're doing now is we've built this process using Box and Nintex workflow and Salesforce. So our finance team, they take that data from the different sources. They still today, they create an Excel file, but instead of having to log in to Salesforce and upload the file, we have created a process where you drop that file into a Box folder, and the Mintex workflow takes that file and then runs the rest of the process. So it uploads the file into Salesforce, runs the DocJen process, and sends out our executive summary report, which goes out in two different forms. It goes out in a PDF and an Excel form. So that's really taken a lot of those manual steps out of that process, as well as allowing anyone from the finance team to drop that file into the Box folder, and then the process completes from there using the Nintex workflow, which has been great. I mean, it takes several steps out. I think we're looking to further automate it as we go forward, but that's what we have right now, and I think that's a big step forward for us. So on the screen now, you can see this is our solution in Nintex workflow. So the first part of that start event, when you drop the Box file in, it recognizes that there's a new file, and that kicks off that workflow. And so, Katie, are you going to take us through the actual workflow here?
Yeah, Brian, thanks so much for the history of Johnson Controls, a little bit about yourself and how you're leveraging Nintex and Box as a solution. My takeaway and what I love most about your story is that Nintex is always talking about connecting people with the data and documents they need when they need them across multiple technologies. And I think this story does a really great job of kind of showing how we can provide synchrony across that type of process, no matter where people are working kind of to do their daily job. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the reins over to Katie to walk us through an actual demonstration of the solution. Katie, you should have access to the event right now.
I do. One moment. Perfect. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Awesome. Okay, hi, my name is Katie Kuhn, and I'm a solutions architect here at Nintex. And I have the privilege of helping Bryan and the team at Johnson Controls set up the automation that I'm going to show you today. So first things first, I'm going to upload my brand new revenue report into my revenue report folder in my Box account. And what NWC is going to do is it's going to automatically pick up the action of me uploading a file into Box, and then it's going to start the workflow based on this file, and is going to use and process this file within the workflow. Excuse me. To speak to what Bryan had mentioned earlier, what Johnson Controls was really able to do was to provide access to generate this file for all kinds of users. So previously, they were relying on one person to manually upload this file and then kick off the reporting process. And as you can imagine, it's very time consuming, even though it's just a short, upload run. And it's still a lot of time out of their day. But by using Box, anyone who has access to this folder will be able to start the process, and they won't need a Salesforce license as well. So the first thing that the workflow is going to do is it's going to attach that file that I just uploaded to this revenue record in my Salesforce account. So as we can see right here, the revenue report I had just uploaded is now attached. And the second thing that's going to do is it's going to upload the ID of that document to this latest Excel doc ID field. So the purpose of that is that it guarantees that only the latest file is referenced, and it eliminates user error in that sense. And then immediately following that, we're doing two things. We're checking a checkbox that's hidden, and then we're unchecking the checkbox. And what that's doing is it kicks off a Salesforce outbound message, which is part of the features that our Nintex DocJen for Salesforce service has. And then the document package from the Nintex DocJen will then create a really pretty report that uses this Excel file as the base data for the document, and then it will send that out automatically to the executive team. So let's go to the email. So you see here, I have an email, and it's to Jim, an executive, and I have two documents attached. I have my pretty dashboard document, which is using the data that I just passed in through that Excel file, and then it's also giving me the raw Excel file that data is based off of, which now includes the data from that Excel file I uploaded. I also wanted to show everyone, especially our Salesforce audience, our new free app on the AppExchange. It's especially for Nintex Workflow Cloud, and it's called, naturally, Nintex Workflow for Salesforce. And it provides you with complete access to your Nintex Workflow Cloud tenant without having to leave the context of Salesforce. So there are 4 tabs. We have dashboards here, which is just a quick overview of everything. And then we have Nintex Workflows, which is very much like this screen in your NWC tenant. It allows you to create, modify, as well as import all of your workflows here. You can also perform all the actions that you would normally be able to perform inside of Nintex Workflow Cloud. Then we have Nintex Workflow Instances, which allow you to see the status of whatever outgoing workflows you might have. So again, you do not have to leave the context of Salesforce just to see all of this information. And the great part about it is when you click on it, it looks very much like Salesforce Lightning. You get these really, cool icons here to just let you know which service you're actually calling, as well as the the status and when it started and when it finished for your records. And then finally, we have the configuration tab. This is the administrative portion of NWC. You can grant users access to the Nintex Workflow for Salesforce application, as well as manage things like licensing and subscription inside of your tenant. So it'll actually just take you directly there. So let's go back to the Workflows tab, and I'm actually going to click on the Send Revenue Report workflow that I built for Bryan's use case. And what this is actually going to do after I click on it is it's actually going to open up the designer directly in Salesforce. So the workflow you can see is really simple. It's only really 4 steps, starting with the start event, which is a box new file. So I've specified here, revenue reports is the folder that I'm going to be listening to. And then if there's a new file, then I'm going to start this workflow. So the first action is attaching the file to a record. You will basically just decide which Salesforce org you want to connect that with, which object in your Salesforce org you want to attach the file to, as well as the ID of the record. For this demonstration, I hard-coded the ID, but you could very easily use a query record action and then, grab exactly the record that you want dynamically. It's especially useful if you have several orgs that you're working within. And one of the things that we are also doing is storing the file ID. So this document ID that you see here is actually the ID of the attachment in Salesforce. So now that I have that information, then I can go to the second step, which is updating that latest Excel doc ID field with the document ID. And then finally, the last two are very similar and very simple. They're just checking a checkbox, yes, send email, and then resetting it back for the next revenue report, back to no. So in addition to being able to access your Nintex Workflow Cloud directly in Salesforce, Nintex Workflow for Salesforce will actually also allow you to create forms that are object specific. So let's go to an account for a moment. So you can see here I have this component for Nintex Workflow, and then I have an actual form here. So what this is doing is we're able to use NWC to specify an object that we want a Salesforce form to be related to. The great thing about that is we can actually get context about the object. So by default, once I hit submit here, the workflow will know exactly which account I clicked submit from, and it will use that information in the workflow. Yeah, so that was my demo. I hope it was helpful. Andy, I will kick it back over to you for Q&A.
Great, Katie. Really appreciate the demonstration, and Bryan for the background and participation in today's presentation. The story is really one that I think resonates well with a lot of enterprise organizations that have multiple departments all working across different systems and different technologies, and yet business processes that marry those individuals and value those individuals' input into the process is really what we're all about in terms of providing value and delivering massive productivity gains like the ones we highlighted today. So I want to open it up to questions across all of our participants. And I'm going to go ahead and just give you guys a second here to add in any questions you have. First question here is, what is DocJen? I'm not familiar with this. So great question, and thanks for bringing that up. For those of you that don't know, Nintex acquired an organization named DrawLoop about 2 years ago. We have been working with that technology for the past 2 years and have rebranded as Nintex Document Generation. It allows our users to dynamically create enterprise-grade content across multiple technologies. And Katie did a great job of highlighting really the birthplace of our document generation capabilities inside Salesforce. But we can also do that within the Workflow Cloud if your organization's not currently leveraging Salesforce as their CRM. All right, let's look for a couple more questions here. A follow-up question on the document generation capability is, what kinds of documents can be generated through this kind of solution? Katie, just for fun, why don't you hop in here and explain a little bit about all of our capabilities around what type of documents can be created?
Sure. So we support practically every major document type that you'd ever want to work with, all of Office and PDF. We can even process Visualforce pages if you're using our Nintex DocJen for Salesforce application. And yeah, it's whichever major documents type you'd want to work with.
Great. Thank you for that, Katie. All right. Another question, and this one's going back to you, Katie. It says, Katie, in your demo, you showed the start event being the Excel file being dropped in a box. Are there triggers that can start the workflow?
So that actually is the trigger for the workflow. So I showed earlier in the actual workflow portion what's called a start event. So for every workflow, you have to tell us when or how you want it to start. So as a default box start event, we actually have what's called box new file. So the revenue reports folder that I was putting the Excel file into is one of the folders that's being quote unquote watched by Mintex Workflow Cloud. So once we sense that there is a new file in that folder, then we will start the workflow. We have other start events for Box that include a new folder as well as a change in metadata. So Box actually has a really cool custom metadata feature. If you wanted to change a status on a file in Box from one status to another, and then you wanted that to kick off the workflow, we could also listen for that as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Katie. Follow-up question, how is one alerted that a file uploaded to Box needs his or her attention? So go ahead, Katie.
That's an interesting question. Can whoever asked it, can they elaborate on that a little bit?
Sarah, that was your question. If you've got a chance to type back in, I think one of the real powerhouse features of the Nintex Workflow Cloud that wasn't necessarily a large part of the demonstration today is our ability to communicate as well as collaborate and kind of automate. So Katie, it might be helpful while we're waiting for her to chime back in if we could just cover off our ability to communicate via email and text and cover off all the options there on how.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So really it depends on how you want to ultimately, let someone know. We have several ways. You can send out an email. You can assign a task. They would also receive an email for that. You can also text. We have an integration with Twilio, which is really cool. And let them know that that's ready for them to view. Yeah, we can also send a Slack message as well, if that's something you'd be interested in doing.
Yeah, well, I think we have actually a question here for Bryan. Bryan, if you're still on, one of the audience members is interested is why is the data being sent to an analyst instead of just going directly into Box?
Well, the data is being compiled from the different systems that we have and then dropped into Box. And so Box takes that compiled data, moves it into Salesforce, runs it against that DocJen setup, and then produces the final document. Does that answer that question?
I think that does a great job, right? It's just there's a couple human-centric steps that need to happen first before the data is passed on. So thanks for clarifying that, Bryan. A question for Katie. Do you have to use multiple update record actions in the workflow to update multiple fields on a single SFDC record?
You don't. I did that so that we could see each action happening. But you could easily add all of your updates into one update a record action.
Great. And Katie, we have a follow-up from Sarah. She says, how does someone know that a workflow has been started and that a file needs to be looked at?
I think we might have answered that one earlier.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we can notify them however you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Let me take a look at some of the other questions. Here's a great question. Is it possible to update metadata in Box to better archive the content?
Yes, you absolutely can. We do have a update metadata. So again, going back to Box's custom metadata feature, you can absolutely update your metadata after or during a workflow.
Great. Okay, I got another question here. It's cool that you've connected Box with Salesforce. What are some of the other applications you can connect to Box through using the workflow?
So the great thing about Mintex Workflow Cloud is that it sort of sits in the middle and can orchestrate data between all these different data sources. So really, I mean, for Bryan's use case, it was Salesforce and Box, right? But we connect with Dropbox, we connect with Google, you know, like OneDrive, or you can also use SQL. You can connect with SharePoint. Yeah, we have connectors for all sorts of other services. And if you can't find the actions that you need, you can always create your own custom one using one of our features called extensions, which basically uses any open API specification from another service and lets you use whatever API offerings they have for you.
Great. Okay, we got a question from Manny. Salesforce and the Nintex integration is really inspiring. Thanks, Manny. Are there any language learning modules in place to learn more about this? And I think that might be just learning modules. Sorry, Manny, let me pull up that question one more time here. Are there any, I think it's just learning modules in place to learn more about the Nintex Workflow Cloud.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I believe we have at least upcoming sort of similar to a Salesforce Trailhead, but our own, that you can learn and sort of earn points on using our Nintex Workflow Cloud.
Yeah,
and
I think
we can probably get them that information.
Yeah, definitely. I think,
Yeah.
Manny, that's a great follow-up conversation. If it's okay with you, we'll reach out following today's webinar with some collateral. And then for anybody in the audience, if there's more questions specific to learning more about the Nintex Workflow Cloud, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at sales@nintex.com. I'm going to take one final question here before we wrap up. It says, can Nintex on-prem connect to Box as well? I think that last one's for you, Katie.
Yeah, you absolutely can. We have an action in the on-prem as well as 0365 SharePoint that actually call Nintex Workflow Cloud. So yes, absolutely.
Great. Guys, I really appreciate everybody's time this morning. It looks like we're going to be able to wrap up and gives everybody a little bit back some time this morning. Want to especially thank Bryan for sharing the Johnson Controls story, and more importantly, for being a Nintex customer. We got to know each other fairly well throughout the evaluation. So Bryan, thanks for your time. Katie, really appreciate the demonstration and all of the great information you were able to share this morning. We look forward to working with everybody on today's call. So please reach out to us at sales@nintex.com. Again, my name's Andy Swanson, and thank you for joining us.